Hi, I'm indie fantasy author Melinda Kucsera, and in this episode of Fantasy Lore and More, we've got Carol Carman, and she's joining me to talk about her book, Twicetime. So, welcome, Carol, and let's talk about Twicetime.
Okay, thank you. First of all, thank you, Melinda, for giving me this opportunity to talk about Twicetime. And it's lovely to finally meet you because we've had one or two hiccups along the way, but we're finally here together.
Yes, we are. I'm glad we finally got it to work out.
It is, yes. Well, as you said, my book is called Twicetime. Oh, she comes into the camera. There we go. And it's got a dark, let me describe it for your listeners.
Please.
It's got a dark blue cover, which ranges from, if you like, a really dark midnight blue at the top and gradually fades to what I would call a royal blue at the bottom. And on it, there is a roundel, and in there is a pub sign. And the pub sign is the sign for the Lamb and Werewolf, which is the pub that's in the book. And what the pub sign represents is, or what's on it, it's a very fearsome looking werewolf. And then above it, a little tiny lamb just peeking out through the werewolf's hair or fur. Do they have fur or do they have hair? I don't know.
I'm not
Anyway,
sure.
As well as being the pub sign and the pub in the book, I think it's also a metaphor for what's in the book. And I think it sort of describes there is a lamb and a werewolf in all of us. And sometimes you've got to be the lamb, and sometimes you've got to be the werewolf. And it's not always up to you when you are which one you are, if you see what I mean.
Oh, wow.
Yes. Shall I read you the blurb on the back and it just give you a flavour of things? Building a bodyguard to kill your aristocratic niece's vengeful ex-husband should be easy for a witch. All you need is the right body and the right magic, and soon you have a mindless killer to do your bidding. Of course, it all depends on what the butler brings back from the cemetery. For Frances Stein, reanimating the dead is one thing. Convincing the corpse there's life after death is another. And finding out he's neither mindless nor killer is something else entirely. Especially when he's her last hope, because they both have a limited lifespan and time is literally running out for the pair of them. ...
Oh, wow. So, should we go into the excerpt, or you want to say anything else before?
Well, shall we go straight into the excerpt?
Yeah, I think we should
can
meet
chat
the
about
characters.
all sorts of things afterwards.
Yeah.
Right. Okie doke. This is from the very beginning of the book. So here we go. It starts off in a castle and then switches to a witch's cottage, and it kind of flip-flops between the two. So here we go. This is the opening of Twicetime. 7 years. 7 years since her father's henchman had held her down while he forced her hand into a signature on the marriage contract, and Lady Rosalind Dibkiss had never given her husband, Lord Rudolph, what he really wanted. Never. So he usually paid for it elsewhere. But temporary financial embarrassment had called for a different approach, one which had propelled him up the spiral stone staircase to the room at the top of the west wing tower of Castle Stein, Rosa's ancestral home, and the place where she and Rudolph lived in a wedded bliss that depended on them seeing each other as little as possible. The room, Rosa's laboratory, was strictly off limits to Rudolph, but if the ancient stone walls looked down on him with disapproval, he didn't notice and wouldn't have cared. Rudolph only noticed what mattered to him, and what had mattered to him from birth was himself. From greedy baby to moody child to petulant adolescent to grasping adult, he'd whined, tantrumed, kicked and snatched his way through life, demanding much and taking all. Few people resisted him. It was generally accepted in Maund that that's what aristocrats do, and if you gave him what he wanted, he shut up and went away a lot quicker than if you didn't. And in the castle, the servants gave him what he wanted, well, because it was their job to. But then there was Rosa. If she caught him in her laboratory, his life could be entirely different, much shorter for a start. However, she was in the library getting a quarterly report from the chief alchemist, so Rudolph had a good couple of hours yet, but better not risk it. He locked the door. On a scarred and stained wooden table lay open a small book so old it only held itself together out of force of habit. The serif-littered handwriting caused eye strain, particularly where the black ink had bled into rainbows under the splash of chemicals. Holes in the ragged pages indicated the power of acids, and brown rings and grease marks showed that those pushing back the frontiers of knowledge still have to eat and drink. Alongside the book, various spoons and spatulas had been thrown onto the table. An assortment of files, bottles, waxed paper sachets, and round ceramic dishes had been assembled. A large glass beaker stood at the ready. Rudolph rubbed his hands together. Now for great Grandpa Stein's love potion. He started filling the beaker. 2 drops of this one, 1, 2, oh, never mind. 6 ounces of this. There, that must be about 6 ounces. Bit more for luck. Half an inch of, that'll be the blue one. Then fill ye glass up to there with this. He held the beaker up to the light and shook it slightly. The ingredients jostled around each other momentarily before reasserting themselves into separate entities. He put the beaker back down, wiped his sweaty palms on his breeches, and ploughed on. 1 of those, 2 tubs of... Is that tubs or tuspubs? Oh, too late now. Stir ye mixture with a glass rod. Glass rod? Oh, a teaspoon will do. And when it doth cease to bubble, it be fit for use. After impatiently whisking the concoction, he banged the teaspoon twice on the side of the beaker before throwing it back into the pile of assorted implements. In the swirling mix, thousands of tiny bubbles laughed. Come on, urged Rudolph. Tiny bubbles, massive energy. When it stops fizzing, it's ready, he said sternly. Energy that wanted to be out and about. Are you going to stop or what? Out and about, playing havoc and making noise. You're not going to stop, are you? Playing havoc and making noise on an epic scale. Uh-oh. There were 2 doors in the room and no time to unlock one of them. Rudolph pushed open the other one, ran through and let the wind slam it after him. It was a doorway that was rarely used, given its close proximity to the sky and the fact that it only had floor on one side. A long scream echoed and fell away, as did Rudolph, and, shortly after the explosion, variously sized fragments of laboratory and castle. Small shards of splintered limestone still skittered down the castle walls and plopped into the moat as Rudolph emerged gasping from the depths. He shook the water from his head. Beaten! Drawbridge! In the cottage. The witch opened the closet, instinctively catching the broomstick as it fell towards her. She put it to one side as she did a wicker washing basket, a garden fork, spade, sieve and trowel, a small wooden stepladder, and another wicker basket full of empty glass jars. Finally, she reached into the closet and pulled out a folded pasting table, which she carried into the garden. The noise of the cottage door opening and closing caused the head of a miniature lion to pop up from the tall grass to see what was happening. Get changed, said the witch. It'll put folk off if they see a lion hanging about. Folk? Said the lion. What folk? The witch unfolded the table. Folk coming for the sale. Today? Said the lion, suddenly blurring into a shimmering cloud which shrank rapidly until it formed a domestic cat, pure white from nose to tail and all points south. The witch pushed the table legs into place. Yes, today. But you only found out yesterday. She stood the table upright. No gets past you, does it? But what? I got the news. We're having the sale. I'm not hanging about. When somebody doesn't want to talk about something else. The cat sat down and thought. Are you? He began, turning to look at the witch, but she had already gone. He padded into the cottage. As he stuck his nose round the bedroom door, the witch said, You'd best sort out what you're taking, and not a lot, mind. We're travelling light. He leapt onto the bed where she was sorting through a meagre pile of clothes next to a small carved wooden box, 3 well-used books, and something that made his heart sink even further. Oh, no, he said, not the cat box. You know I hate the cat box. You have to use it if we're going away. You haven't said where we're going. The witch took a haversack from the back of the bedroom door. Home, she said gently. We're going home. But this is our home. No, this is just where we've lived and worked, but not for much longer. Are you going to stop working? The cat asked. The witch packed the books in the haversack. Don't see why not. What? Stop being a witch? Ah, now, that's a different thing altogether, she said, wrapping the carved wooden box in the clothes she had chosen. A witch is what I am, and work is what I do. She put the bundle into the haversack. I can't stop being what I am. In the castle, thick hawsers lowered huge beams, and before long Rudolph's wet feet were slapping across the drawbridge and onto the stone flags of the great hall. Fetch a towel, Beaton, then run me a bath. Very good, my lord. Beaton bowed and headed for a pair of double doors that were flung open as a distraught Rosa ran into the hall. She stopped when she saw the bedraggled Rudolph, breeches torn, sloshing over to the fireplace. Ye gods, she cried, you're still alive. So I am. He started to wring out his waistcoat, and small rivulets ran into the fire, sizzling and spitting. Rosa paced back and forth behind him. That's bloody typical of you. You blow up the castle and don't even have the decency to die in the explosion. Must be my lucky day. Lucky day? Nothing wrong with your hearing, then. The only thing wrong with me is that I didn't stab you with a cake knife at the wedding. I wish I'd stabbed your father. You bastard, said Rosa. That man, Rudolph shouted her down, ruined my life. She stopped pacing and put her hands on her hips. As I recall, it was your father who ruined my life by selling you into marriage for more money to gamble away. Rudolph spun round to face her. Drops of moat water lashed from his shirt flaps and breeches onto the fire, where they hissed and raged. Your father promised me half his fortune. And you already had half of it. Those pitiful bits you give me. Don't make me laugh. I won't, she said. I'm going to make you cry. Beaten? Stop whining, woman. It was only your laboratory. Only my laboratory? Only my life's work? The double doors opened and Beaton entered, carrying a large towel. Rudolph took it from him. I don't know why you're making such a fuss, Rosa. No, you don't, do you? Because you haven't even got enough brains to be a half-wit. He waved at her dismissively. Just, you have absolutely no conception of the enormity of what you've done, have you? Get that? So I'll give you a clue. Beaton, set fire to the games room. At the cottage. On the pasting table in the garden, an assortment of non-matching cups was heavily outnumbered by a wobbly pile of non-matching plates and saucers. Beside them stood a set of stacking saucepans, 3 stew pots, a clattering of cutlery from the kitchen drawer, and an empty tea tray. The witch knew that this was the calm before the storm, so she savoured the peace and quiet of the open space. Would she ever know such peace again? Maybe one day. Maybe in a 12 months, give or take. She took the empty tray back into the cottage and reloaded it with the remainder of her books and clothing, plus a badly painted ornament proclaiming itself a present from Scrubble. When she stepped back outside, at least 20 people were already reaching, stretching, and pointing in all directions as they tried to match up the crockery. She put the tray on the table and eager hands snapped at its contents. Laying open a long, thin, felt-lined wooden cash box, she pushed away reaching fingers. "That's not for sale." She clapped her hands, then rubbed them together and smiled at the jostling crowd. "Right," she said. "Who's first?" Despite the number of people in the garden and their desperation to buy anything that might contain even a trace of residue magic to bring them good luck, the dealing was swift and without rancour. Soon the table was cleared except for the felt-lined box, which now contained an assortment of coins, mostly copper and silver. However, there were 2 gold pieces, thanks to the Countess of Chailey's manservant, who had been given leave to use them to pay for whatever he could get his hands on, which turned out to be 2 badly stained teaspoons and a rolling pin. When everyone else had gone, a tall, skeletal figure walked somberly along the cottage path. His flowing grey hair and beard were recently combed, and his pink face looked as if it had been the victim of a surprise, vigorous washing in the not-too-distant past. His full-length coat and pointed hat were fashioned from sumptuous red brocade covered in gold-embroidered mystical symptoms, and he bore not only a long wooden staff with a golden screw sticking out of the top, but also a strong smell of mothballs. The witch and the wizard stared at each other silently for a few moments. Then the witch lifted a small red cloth from the centre of the table, revealing a clear glass sphere standing on a short silver shaft. The man shivered momentarily. How much?" he said. She folded her arms. "Well, that's up to you." Resting his wooden staff in the crook of his elbow, he put a hand inside his robe and retrieved a leather drawstring pouch hanging on a cord around his neck. He opened the pouch, took out 5 gold pieces and slowly laid them on the table. The witch glanced at the coins, then at the pouch, then back at the man. "I've got a long way to go." He laid another 2 gold pieces on the table. "And I'm not coming back," she added. That was worth another 3. "Ever." 5 more. She nodded. The man gulped. His trembling, spindly fingers closed around the glass orb, and he rotated it until he saw a tiny hole in the end of the silver shaft. He took a quivering breath, put the tip of the golden screw into the hole, and turned the staff, watching the screw bite into the silver until it could go no further. He let go of the glass gingerly, lest it fall to the ground and splinter into thousands of irreparable shards. But to his obvious relief, the crystal was securely fixed. He held it up to the sunlight, and his knees sagged slightly as he pressed his lips together and whimpered. He breathed deeply, bowed to the witch, and then walked, a little unsteadily, back up the path and out of sight. "Silly old fool," muttered the witch, unfolding her arms and brushing the coins into the felt-lined box, which went into her pocket. She folded the pasting table and carried it indoors. The cat was in a fireside chair, pressing into the cushion as if trying to imprint on himself a tangible reminder of the fast disappearing time of his life. The witch emptied the money onto the kitchen table. "Sounds like there's gold in that there till," said the cat. "Go on then, smarty paws, how much have we got?" He closed his eyes. "Stack 'em into piles." She did as he wished, trying to throw him off the trail by chinking the coins a lot more than was necessary. "Well?" she said eventually. There was no reply, so she looked towards him. He screwed his nose up and moved his head from side to side, paused, and then moved it again. He sat up and rubbed his paws against his ears. "I thought I counted 17 gold pieces, 9 silver, and 4 coppers," he said. "But that can't be right." "Bang on." 1, 17, 9, and 4 for that load of tite you took out there. Have they got more money than sense?" "That damn fool wizard has." "The wizard? Parting with money? Is he not well?" The witch chuckled. "He'll be as sick as a pig once he realises he's given me 15 gold pieces for a glass doorknob." In the castle, Beaton stooped to juggle a couple of burning coals onto the fireside shovel. "You touch that games room, Beaton, and you're a dead butler," said Rudolph, drying his face and hair with a towel. Beaton straightened up again. My lord. Rosa adopted that reasonable, smiling tone of voice used by those who wish to gently illustrate a foregone conclusion. Beaton, who pays your wages? Milady, milady. And who will drink us into drink and gamble us into bankruptcy? My lord, milady. Rudolph stopped rubbing his hair and draped the towel around his neck. He sighed. All right, all right. He looked at her with the air of one about to undergo some waste of time in order to placate those in charge. I'm sorry about the lab, he said with a practiced false sincerity. But if you get the builders in, you can carry on your little hobby in no time. Little hobby, Rosa snarled. Little hobby. She clenched her teeth and growled, bending and flexing her fingers as she moved towards Rudolph. He started to back away. Now, Rosa, you're just a bit wound up. You know how tense you get around this time of the month. How dare you? She lunged, grabbed his waistcoat and pulled it down over his shoulders, trapping his arms, then barreled him against the wall, knocking the wind out of him. As he buckled, she gripped the towel and kicked his feet from under him. As he fell, she went with him, slamming his aristocratic features into the stone flags. She sat on his back and twisted the towel tighter. Now listen to me, you inbred imbecile, she hissed. You may have ruined my life's work, but no more will you ruin my life. Beaton, fetch the chief alchemist and some rope. There we are. End of excerpt.
Wow, there was a lot going on in there.
There was.
Wow. I kind of want to know what happens next, but I know that we have to move on from that. I think I've said this before. I love listening to authors read their books. I wasn't ready for it to stop. But I never am. I'm always caught off guard because I'm like, wait, I need to know what happens next.
Exactly. Always finish on a cliffhanger. That's the thing. Yes.
I am hanging from that cliff. I'm digging my nails in.
That's what I like to hear. That's what I like to hear. So that kind of sets the scene. You've got the two stories, and obviously at some point they do interweave together, and then the rest of the story carries on.
This is like wild. I love the premise that like she's going to build someone to kill someone, and the person she builds is like, yeah, no.
Yes, that's it.
That's so wild.
Well, it all started from the question, what if Frankenstein had been a woman? Why would she have needed to build a monster? And the answer is to protect herself from another monster, her ex-husband. Because, as you can guess from that excerpt, Rosa throws Rudolph out, and basically he vows to retake the castle and kill her, really. So she needs some protection. And so she and her aunt, who is the witch, decide to build a bodyguard. But as I said in the blurb, it all depends on what the butler brings back from the cemetery, because you've got to work with the tools that you've got and the resources at your disposal. And let's face it, big, strong, dead bodies aren't always that easy to come by, are they?
No. And even so, you could get a gentle giant like Andre.
Indeed. Absolutely.
Yeah. Like, just because they're big and strong does not mean that they're going to be, some stone cold killer either.
Absolutely not. And when you have to put one together from various body parts, who knows what you're going to end up with?
Yeah, like, so in your world, so the fact that they're building someone from body parts, do those body parts bring with them parts of okay, not like I don't want to say parts of their owners, because they are parts of their previous owners. Yes. They are body parts, the essence or personality or any sort of anything from them, or is it they're just parts?
No, that's exactly it. They do bring, one part brings strength, one part brings sensibility. And it's a case of balancing those things one against the other. It's not just a case of they're lumps of meat. They, in effect, I suppose they have muscle memory, don't they? I mean, we all
Yeah.
have muscle memory, and just because they've been dead, they haven't been dead very long.
Right,
But just
right.
because they've been dead doesn't mean that muscle memory wouldn't work again, after a spark of life is put back into it.
And supposedly your heart has actual memories. Like not all your memories are stored in your brain. A really
Oh,
fascinating article about that. So
oh,
people
really?
who get heart transplants suddenly start taking on characteristics of and having like vague memories sometimes
Oh,
from their previous. Yeah, there's a whole thing. There was like this vegan, I don't remember if they're athlete or what they were. They got a heart transplant because they had a heart issue from,
yeah.
genetically, not anything to do with their lifestyle or anything. And they suddenly had a craving for like meat, which they never were into before. And
Oh,
they did some research, and like there's this things that like they never liked before that they were suddenly like drawn to.
yeah.
And there was a whole, yeah, it's sort of a fascinating thing that not all your memories in your brain, some of them are in your heart.
Oh, that is. Oh, well, there's a premise for a book, isn't there?
Right.
Absolutely.
Sometimes science is more fantastic than fantasy.
I love science. I
Right.
love science.
So do I. Like, who would have thought? When I saw that, I was like, "You've got to be kidding me!" And it was in
Yeah,
like some really reputable magazines, some really reputable journals, and I was like, "Oh my." Maybe, there's still they don't know exactly how much is there, but like
yeah.
it's just it's not an isolated incident with this person. They did like a whole study across other people who had heart transplants and found the same thing that they were taking on, and some of them like actually sought out the donors' families because they like and they said meeting them, it was like meeting long lost family. Um,
No.
yeah, like it's wild.
Oh, I'm just going to write that down.
I think you should check it. Like I don't remember all the details. I might be messing things up, but I remember reading about this and I was like, oh, I can't figure out where I would put that, but like that's definitely something to explore in the future.
Absolutely.
I
Definitely.
think it's perfect for you. Like for me, it wouldn't really fit because I write epic
Yeah.
fantasy and like we're not transplanting hearts here. So,
Yeah.
but like since you're already like taking body parts and sewing, and like that's your world building is around that, and you have a magic system which we're going to dig into that supports this. This is right up your alley.
Well,
So you come for an
it does
interview,
absolutely sound like it.
and I give you story ideas.
Thank you very much. Can I come back again? This is
Of
brilliant. I'm
course,
getting more and more story
yeah. Come back with the
ideas.
next book.
Yeah.
I have more ideas than I know what to do with,
Yeah.
so I'm happy to give them out.
Uh, Also, the thing with Twicetime is, it yes, it's got elements of the Frankenstein story in it, but this is this is my this is
Yes.
my area, if you like. I like looking at fairy stories and well-known tales from a different angle, and I hadn't realised this until quite recently. When I was about 8 or 9, and I was at primary school, the teacher started reading a book to us, which was called The Land of Green Ginger, and it's by an author called Noel Langley. And I thought it was a very, very funny book. I'd be about, what, 8 or 9, something like that. And I thought it
Yeah.
was a very, very funny book indeed. And what it is, it's, we all know the story of Aladdin, and
Mhm.
he goes through his troubles, and then he gets the princess at the end. But what happens after that? What happens to Aladdin after that? And this book
Oh,
is not so
yeah.
much what happens to Aladdin, but what happens to Aladdin's son. And without giving any spoilers away, Aladdin's son meets up with the son of the genie from the lamp, and they have an adventure. Now,
Oh.
obviously, it's a kid's book. Um,
Wait, who did the genie marry?
ah, well, what happened was that um, the prince, Aladdin's son, who's called
Mhm.
Abu Ali, he rubs the magic lamp, but the genie was in the bath. So the genie's son answered the magic lamp and then couldn't remember how to get back in again. So he was stuck outside having to help, and he couldn't remember how to get back into the lamp to go and get his dad. And the son of the genie was called, he had a wonderful name, Boomer Lakawi. So you've got Abu Ali and Boomer Lakawi. And this story also introduced two villains. And there was a tall, thin one and a short, fat one. And the short, fat one was called Rub Dub Ben Thud. And the tall, thin one was called Tin Tac Ping Fu. And something about that story and those characters and those names must have stuck in my brain.
Right.
Because years later, I was on a creative writing course, and the tutor there said, what I'd like you to do is look at a fairy story from the point of view of one of the lesser characters. And so I thought, oh no, he said Cinderella. Let's look at Cinderella from the point of view of one of the, it's not Cinderella's story, it's somebody else's story. And I decided to have a look at it from the point of view of the fairy godmother.
Oh.
And how does the fairy godmother do it? She's got to get everything together for this girl.
And why? I never understood, why. Yes, okay, great, you have a fairy godmother, but, I have godmothers. She doesn't show up. I love you dearly, my godmother. Yeah. But, she didn't show up, to give me a prom dress or anything.
No.
I always wondered, what did the fairy she must have gotten something out of this, because she was there, she was in it. Did she have a bet with somebody that she was trying to win? Because that's how tenacious she was about this.
Absolutely. But not only what did she get out of it, but where did she get everything? Yeah. Because she's got to get a coach, she's got to get horses, she's got to get footmen, she's got to get uniforms for the footmen, she's got to make sure the coach is roadworthy, that the horses are fed and watered before they set off. She's got to get a dress for this woman, that fits. She's got to get shoes for this woman that fits. And she's got
and they have to be glass. You can't really go to just any cobbler for glass shoes.
Exactly. How impractical is that? And where does she get them all from? And there was something about writing that.
And why glass slippers? Because any other medium for footwear would have been easier to acquire, I'm sure.
Indeed. But absolutely. They do say it's a mistranslation, don't they? From verre, from the French verre, meaning glass, to verre, meaning fur, a pair of fur slippers, which would make more sense.
Yeah.
But can you imagine going to a ball in a pair of fur slippers? Not really.
Yeah, that would have been a bit weird. I think that's why they went with glass. They're that's not exotic enough for a ball.
But I found that looking at a story from a completely different character's point of view, because it already taps into what the reader thinks they know about that story, but brings an extra dimension to it or brings a twist on it. And so, that's why Twicetime has elements of Frankenstein into it. And like I said, what if Frankenstein had been a woman? Why would she have needed to build a monster?
Yeah. And now I want to know. But we obviously can't give that away because that's the whole book. All right. So let's dig into the magic system. Because you have to have a pretty interesting magic system if you can just take parts of dead bodies and slap them together and get some kind of a result that does something other than stink up your house or your castle in this case.
Yes. This is my second book, and my first book was called Gingerbread Children, and that was a twist on Hansel and Gretel stories, the Hansel and Gretel story. But there was a mystery wrapped around it as well. Because again, with Hansel and Gretel, you think this just makes no sense. Here is a woman who lives in an edible cottage, for goodness sake. She could eat her own house and home. She's a witch. She can summon up a feast any day of the week.
Just eat the house. The house is a feast.
Why does she need to eat children?
I never understood that.
At all. And I firmly believe that the witch in Hansel and Gretel was just the victim of a very bad press by people who wanted her out of the way, and so they put this story about her.
Or she's allergic to sugar, so she's living in this sugary cottage and she can't eat it.
Oh, I hadn't thought of that.
Maybe they cursed her and she can't leave the cottage. She can't eat the cottage, so she's stuck. And her only way of getting nourishment is to get something living to. I mean, in kids would be drawn to, or even adults. I mean, anybody who likes sugar would be drawn to the house.
And we all know how addictive sugar is.
Yeah. I mean, that could have been a whole, like, somebody could do a whole thing on that, like the
Yeah,
whole addictiveness of sugar.
yeah. But that first book, Gingerbread Children, it was a lot of it was set in and around a place called the University of Nature, which is where witches have been trained since before time immemorial was born. And so the link between that
Wait.
one,
So all the staff are witches?
all the staff are witches, and they train witches basically to go out and be witches in the community.
How do witches know about this school of nature? This is kind of fascinating. Did they get like a, I don't know, like
Well, it just takes in girls. It just takes in non-witches, girls, and trains them up to be witches.
But how, so like you can just apply to it like a regular school?
Yeah,
What's the entry
absolutely.
requirements? Is it like, okay, you have to want to come here and be female and we'll take you? Or is there like a some kind of rubric they're looking at for potential candidates?
Well, I think the thing is that if you can work your way through the school and emerge at the end of it a fully fledged witch, then you've proven your suitability to be a witch, if you like.
Okay.
Because, I suppose it's like any school. You take in so many, and you won't always produce a brain surgeon or a rocket scientist. Sometimes you'll just produce a bank clerk. Not that there's anything wrong with bank clerks or whatever, but some people are not suited to that kind of education, and it's the same with the University of Nature.
I see. I see.
If you get through it, and you're a witch. But the thread between the first book and Twicetime is that the witch in Twicetime was trained at the University of Nature. And subsequent books that I write, they will all feature a witch who's been trained at the University of Nature.
Is there one campus, or is there many different ones?
No, there's one giant main campus, and
that's where all the witches go.
It's where all the witches go. And I tell a lie, there is a second element to it, which is the flying school. That's in a separate building, basically for safety's sake, because you don't want trainee witches learning how to fly on a broomstick and just basically crashing through your window when you're in the middle of an important lecture, do you?
No.
So there's a separate campus, if you like, for the flying school. But
are you ever going to do any stories about people attending the school and what that's like?
I probably might well do.
Because that'd be fun.
I think it would be.
Yeah.
I've got another one on the boil at the moment, but I'll say more about that later. Yeah. So the University of Nature, it's shaped like a giant witch's hat.
Oh, that's fun.
It's a massive, massive witch's hat sitting, if you like, on a glass globe. And the glass globe is called the Globe Hall. But from a distance, it just looks like a giant witch's hat sitting on a glass globe.
That's so fun. I like that. I like unusual buildings and architecture, and that's so neat. All right, so how does magic work for the witches? Is it a soft magic system, or is it something that has hard and fast rules?
There are hard and fast rules, which the main rules at the moment, because I'm quite early into the series, if you like. So, if you like, the hard and fast rules at the moment are to do with ending a spell. So, if a spell is cast, depending on how long that spell is meant to last, you have to have official sign-offs at various levels. And this is dealt with more in gingerbread children. So if you want a spell to just last for 5 minutes, if you want to do a quick tidy up of the house because you've got visitors coming, you don't have to worry about getting that signed off officially. It just works and pa-ching, and away, and it's done. But if you want to curse somebody for 500 years, let's say, then obviously the witch who casts that original spell will be long gone by then. So that spell has to be signed off by somebody in high authority at the University of Nature, usually by either the matriarch, who's the head of the University of Nature, or a member of the senior council, something like that. Otherwise, if a spell goes beyond its time and is not signed off at the correct moment, it can start to decay. And once a spell starts to decay, anything can happen. Anything can happen at all, which is pretty open-ended, but that's the way I like it, because it gives you free rein to think about anything.
Are we gonna see that in one of your books? Somebody didn't get the proper sign-offs and the spell decays and all the chaos that causes?
It's very possible. I'm saying nothing at the moment, but it's very possible.
I like seeing magic go awry. I don't know. It's something weird. I just like stories. And okay, we've got this carefully ordered system.
Yeah.
But then this happens.
Yeah.
And now it's throwing the whole thing into disarray.
Yeah. And within the University of Nature, there are books of procedures and ceremonies, just like you would have in a proper university or something. You would have a fixed way of doing things, and these would be written down on old leather-bound ledgers and kept somewhere originally, obviously. And there's all sorts of procedures for allocating witches to familiars and familiars to witches, and there's a ceremony to do that. And each of them, when a witch is matched with a familiar, a lock of hair is cut from the witch and fastened in a silver clasp and given to the familiar, and a lock of fur is cut from the familiar and put in a silver clasp and given to the witch. And these are called bargain tokens, and it's a token of the bargain struck between witch and familiar, and they keep those until death or proven misfaith, which means that either your familiar or your witch has been unfaithful one to the other, as it were.
Ooh.
Like consorting with another familiar or something like that.
Wow, that's neat.
Yeah, but that's more explored in gingerbread children, really.
So in Twicetime, how do they use magic to build another person? Is there I guess there's a procedure in there, or is this, are they making this up as they go along and it's trial and error?
Well, Rosa, the character that we met there, who incidentally is her name is Rosalind, because she's named for Rosalind Franklin, who with Crick and Watson, double helix,
identified DNA,
and of course was left off the history books for so long. So that's my little tribute to Rosalind Franklin. But she, being the scientist, it's a bit the way they do it. There is a, and this all comes to the title, Twicetime. There is a special substance called Twicetime that is needed. You have ordinary time, you have Twicetime, and Twicetime is very special because it's only usually for twins, and it's, in effect, it's the spark of life that gives the body its life. And they have to, the witch has to get this from somewhere, and then, in effect, it's a bit like, you've seen things like Young Frankenstein and the old
Mm.
1920s movies, and that where there's a big laboratory and there's wires and dials and little things sparking across and Van de Graaff generators and all that sort of thing. And there's a massive storm raging outside, and suddenly, well, let's just say
Lightning.
that's involved as well. So it's a combination of nature and magical substance.
That's cool. They get a little help from nature.
Yes. Oh, well, Mother Nature's always on the witch's side.
She's like, yeah, they're not going to get this without a little bit of help. Let me send some lightning.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Maybe Mother Nature is their fairy godmother in that sense.
I suppose so, really, yes. But she features very heavily in, excuse me, in the University of Nature, because it's all about, yes, you're learning magic, but you are learning to respect nature and to use things of nature as nature intended. So you can get witches coming through who are herbalists, or you can get witches coming through who are brewers, and you can get witches coming through who are architects who build with natural materials, things like that. There's a whole load of disciplines in the University of Nature, but they all come with magic associated with them.
Oh, wow. That's wild. That's so neat. And now is Twicetime. So we've got the gingerbread man
Yeah,
and was it children of gingerbread?
gingerbread children. Yeah,
Gingerbread children. I was like, I know there's gingerbread and there's children.
yes,
I'm bad with names. Even of my own books, I'm like, it's called something. It was something obvious, so I wouldn't forget
yes,
it.
yeah.
And then of course I did.
Oh,
And
trust
now
me,
we.
I have a file on my computer that is called, in capital letters, "This is the file you're always looking for," because I can never remember what the name of it is.
Oh, that's wild. That's wild. I'm pretty good at most things. It's just like for some reason, like it's especially like with like song titles or like book
Yeah,
titles. I'm like, I read this great book last week, and I was like, oh, what's it called? And I was like, let me bring up the,
let me
let
think.
me go check my phone because I just like it had a title. I know it had a title. I can remember all the characters' names and the plots,
Yeah,
but can I tell you the title? No.
yeah.
Not without a little bit of help from my phone.
Ah,
So we've got gingerbread children, and we have Twicetime. So
yes.
is Twicetime going to have? I think you mentioned it's going to have a sequel.
Uh, Not at the moment,
Oh, okay.
because
But there's another story in that world
there's
coming.
another story in that world that I'm working on at the moment, which is it's a take on Sleeping Beauty.
Ooh,
Yes, so it's looking at Sleeping Beauty from another angle.
what's the other angle?
Ooh, what can I say?
Not ready to say.
Well, put it this way: there's a reluctant prince in it, who is sent by his father to go across the mountains, and try to wake up the Sleeping Beauty, because the king of the other kingdom is a bit miffed that this kingdom has never sent anybody to try and wake up Sleeping Beauty. So, in order to avert a war, this kingdom's king sends his son to try and wake her up, just to keep the peace. And that's as much as I can say at the moment.
Ooh, so is that coming out next year?
Uh, no, because I'm only, what am I? I'm something like 50,000 words into it at the moment, so it needs finishing first.
Ah, okay.
But I've got other things on the go as well. So this is why I need an AI kitchen, like you were suggesting.
Oh
I need an
yes,
AI
yes,
kitchen.
yes. We were talking about how like with like forget AI like writing stories and making images. Where's my AI kitchen and my AI
Where,
laundry person?
yes, where's my AI chef?
Yes. I want to be able to walk into my kitchen and say, "All right, kitchen GPT. I want whatever." I don't know. I can't think of anything right now.
Yeah,
And it needs to order the food, get the groceries from the door and make the thing.
yeah,
Yeah. Or maybe it'll tell me, well, you have this in the fridge. You can have I can make these things from it. What do you
Yes.
want? That would be awesome too. I'm not really much of a cook. But
Bring on that day. Bring on that day. That's what we
right,
need.
right. So what else do you have on? You said you have some other things on the go. So you're writing
Yes.
something else as well.
So there's the twist on Sleeping Beauty, which at the moment has a working title of Sleeping Duty, because it's a duty of the prince to go across.
Mm-hmm.
That may change, obviously. I'm working on a book with a cartoonist as well. I'm trying to put together a book of short stories. And going back to what I was saying about the Cinderella story and the fairy godmother and where does she get all this stuff? Well, I'm writing a book of short stories and they all center on a shop where the characters in fairy stories and well-known tales can go and get the things that they need for their stories to work.
So that's where they get the glass slippers and
You get the glass slippers, that's where you get the ball gowns, that's where you can order your coach and all that sort of thing. Yeah, so I'm trying to put together a short story of that. I'm trying to put together a book of parody poems. Um, and it's got
parodying.
just parodying anything, because
Oh, anything. Okay, I thought there was like a
before I
specific.
before I started really writing stories, I wrote poetry because I've always had this sort of facility for rhythm and rhyme. Like some people are naturally good at woodwork and others are naturally good at metalwork and some people are naturally good at cooking and all this sort of thing. I just get tuned in to rhythm and rhyme.
Oh
And
wow.
so I've written an awful lot of poetry, not all of it brilliant, I will admit, but I do like writing a parody. And for example, I don't know if you know the song At 17 by Janice Ian. I learned the truth at
No.
17 that love was made for beauty queens and that.
Oh, it's sounding a bit more familiar
Yeah.
now. Me
Um,
and the song titles.
you in the song titles. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I wrote one which started off, I learned the truth when I was 9. My nose was somewhat aquiline. My ears stuck out upon each side like taxi doors flung open wide. My eyes were crossed, as were my teeth, one up the top, one underneath. I had a face no one could love, except my mum and God above. Life wasn't very fine when I was 9. And so,
That's cute.
thank you.
I
And
like
so,
that.
um, I've written sort of quite a few of these which take already existing rhythms, if
Hmm.
you like, and just tries to put a twist on them. So there's that on the go as well.
That's definitely something you should record yourself reading because you
Do you
have
think?
a really good voice for that and you're
Oh, that's
really
very
good
kind of
at
you.
doing
Thank
the
you.
rhythm. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, if you get that and that becomes a thing, you have to self-narrate it somehow because that's something people should hear you read.
Thank you
Oh
very
no,
much.
I think we need to restart our guest. She has frozen.
Yeah, I think possibly because I used to be a journalist with the
Mm,
BBC, so I got used to talking, to people and um, talking into a microphone
mm.
and being able to project and give things various different emphases. But I've always enjoyed reading things out loud, and I think it's a great thing. It's just a tip for any writer, any beginning writer. Once you've written something, read it out loud because you will soon spot flaws in your writing where it doesn't quite flow properly. You might have been hearing things in your head that haven't necessarily translated to the ends of your fingers. And once your piece is finished, if you read it out loud, you'll be able to hear it and hear how it sounds and know whether it needs an apostrophe. So instead of saying there is, it could become theirs, because that's how people talk. People shorten words all the time. And if you write them out as full words, it might sound stilted. And that's one of the things that I would advise anybody, particularly if you're going in for a competition, for a writing competition. I've been a judge on writing competitions previously, and this is the advice that I always give to people going in for writing competitions: is read it out loud. Because what you want to get is, if you like, the sound of your voice in that story coming through naturally into the ear, through the eye of the reader. If follow that convoluted thing, it's got to ring true. And one way to test if it rings true is to read it out loud.
I also like, just to build on that point, having one of those like AI voices read it to you, because if you read your thing aloud, if you missed a word or something, your brain's gonna fill it in and you're gonna read it with that word, but it's not in the text. But if the AI
Yes.
reads it to you, they're not going to do that. If you
Yes.
miss a word, or you're gonna hear that.
Yeah.
So I would
Absolutely.
also recommend doing that too, because both of them give you something different.
I couldn't agree more. I did both of those things with Twicetime. I read it out loud to myself, and I had um, the screen reader software,
Mhm.
had that read it out to me. And you're absolutely right.
Oh,
It
yeah.
does. It picks things up that your brain automatically fills in for you, but
Yes,
you've
yes.
either left them out or you've put them in and you shouldn't have. Yeah.
Yeah, I had this one, it read me the sentence 3 times, and I still couldn't find the word that was, because my eyes and my brain kept editing it on screen, and I'm like, "I hear it's missing, but I can't see it." And I finally, like, I went to a different device that changed the view, so the words were not quite, it broke the sentence in a different place because it was a smaller screen. I could finally see where the word was missing. So
Excellent.
yeah, so be
Excellent
aware
advice.
of that your eyes and your brain sometimes work against you. Like, it
Yes,
knows what's
definitely.
supposed to be there.
Yes. Yes.
So
I'm,
definitely look
I'm
at your book.
100% behind you.
Oh yeah, look at your book on different devices, if you as
Yeah.
you're reading it back to yourself, because if you read it too often on your computer screen, like, try reading it on your phone, and you'll see, there's so many things that you'll see suddenly, because the text is rearranged differently and your brain is not
Yeah.
rewriting what's on screen just yet, because it's the
Yeah.
first time it's seeing it in this new arrangement.
Yeah.
So that's,
Absolutely.
and I think that's why a lot of authors, I see this from all different authors, like, oh God, I just published a book and I was looking at it on my Kindle and I see all these mistakes that I didn't catch when I was looking, because I'm like, yeah, because you were looking at it on your computer screen, and now on your phone the text is broken up differently because it's a smaller thing. So just another little trick,
Yeah, definitely.
because we need all the help we can to find those typos.
We can, because what you want as a writer is to get your reader so deeply embroiled into your story that you don't want anything to jerk them out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Anything at all. Now, that might be a reference to something which doesn't necessarily belong in that world, but makes a good joke. If it doesn't belong in that world that you've created, don't put it in.
Mm.
It's not worth it, because it will break your reader's concentration, and there's a chance they'll put your book down.
Yeah, and watch the pronouns. Like, my favorite typo was in a um traditionally published book that I read in the early 2000s. And in this one scene, this one pivotal scene, that I don't know what drugs the copy editor or the editors were on, but the genders of all the characters suddenly changed in this one conversation and made it was this pivotal scene, and trying to figure out who was referring to who.
Oh,
um and then it was fine after that. It was like this really pivotal conversation, and I could not figure out like what was happening, because she was suddenly him and he was suddenly her, and like and the dialogue was just not making, because they stopped using names at one point and just went with the pronouns.
oh,
And
right.
like it was like, And then in another traditionally published book, it was a lot of guys at the table and they're all talking. I mean, I don't know why, but during this one part of the conversation, they didn't use they just use he and him. And I'm like, well, which one? There's 8 people
Yes.
at the table. So like, yeah. So also watch your pronouns.
Yeah, I've come across that myself just recently,
Make it
and in a
clear for
traditionally
us.
published book,
Yeah.
and it, you'll get a paragraph about a certain character, and then there'll be a line of dialogue, and it just says he says. So you think that character is saying it, but it's not. It's a character who's described somewhere up here.
Yeah,
Um,
that's why repeat their name. Make it's better to be repetitive
yes,
and to be clear,
yes,
Yeah. But
yeah.
anyways, let's get back to all
Anyway,
right. So you've got this parody poem book you're working on, a book of short stories,
book of short
and
stories, a book with a
another book.
cartoonist.
Oh, what's the one
Yes.
with the cartoonist? Is that something different,
Um,
or is that the short story one?
no, that's something completely different,
What's
and
that?
I can't really say very much about it at the moment because we're only part way through it. But it's it's a dystopian book for young adults,
Hmm.
really.
Like a
And
graphic novel, or
no, it's a proper novel. It's not a graphic novel or a comic novel or whatever. It's quite a serious thing, um, with elements of humour in it, obviously, because I'm all about the giggles. I've got a very low giggle threshold. I'm always looking for the laugh, so if I can get one in there, I will do. Um, yeah, but like I said, I can't say too much more about that, but
I'm
I'll
just
let you
wondering.
know.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how you're gonna do that because, for anybody who doesn't know, like when you upload ebooks to Amazon, for Kindle, if you have like pictures and things, that can increase the delivery cost. And
Oh
if you're
yeah,
not careful, that's why most ebooks published through KDP have no pictures, because
yeah,
we don't get a royalty if our delivery costs go, and just adding even a few pictures can push it into that. And the more pictures you have, a couple, and they've recently been changing. So I would be, if you're going to do cartoons and stuff, I'd keep them in the print book because we don't get charged for that. But
yes,
on in the ebook side, or and you can offer that the cartoons that go with it, it's people to like sign up to your newsletter, and you'll send them a separate thing. Because if you're sending it, you're not paying delivery fees,
yeah,
but Amazon charges delivery fees. They're the only retailer who charges authors delivery fees for ebooks.
yes,
Um, and I've seen a few people who got no royalty at all because the Amazon has changed some of their structure, the way they handle that recently. So I don't put any pictures in any of my books for that reason.
mm,
Any the special editions that have pictures, you would have to get from either my store or from a Kickstarter, because for that reason, because they're just not dealing with it. That's not worth it.
mm,
It's a lot of, so I would say before you get too deep into something that's very picture heavy, do your research and look into that, because if it's only something you're going to be able to do in print, you're going to have like a very strong print marketing for this in order to get back your
yeah,
investment. If it's not something you're going to be able to do in ebooks, yeah, I would look into that, because a lot of
excellent,
things have
excellent.
been changing. Amazon's making a lot of changes lately. I don't know if your books are wide or if they're just in it. I think they're just in KU. Um,
Yeah, excellent advice. Thank you very much.
yeah, I just don't want to see you be like, I just don't want to see you be that person who like posts in the group like, I didn't get a royalty, and if people start digging in and you find out it's the delivery fee,
Yeah,
because it racks up fast.
yeah. They've got you every which way, haven't they?
They don't really want to pay us, if you hadn't noticed. They're looking for literally any reason not to pay us, so, don't
Yeah.
give them that.
Oh,
So,
uh,
protect yourself there.
yep.
Um, but yeah, that's a recent development, like, because when people who are in KU didn't have to worry about that, but now they do. So you won't be seeing as many really big box sets on Kindle Unlimited, because the same thing, if they're also getting charged delivery fee. There was somebody, a pretty big author, posted about that. He did a YouTube video I would say a month or so ago about that. That So yeah, things are changing.
Aren't they always? It's difficult
Yeah.
to keep up.
But if you're gonna do a book with like pictures in it, that might be something better to kickstart.
Yes. Well, we've
Because
got to
then,
write it first, so.
well, yeah, but because then you are, it's you're sending, because then you can send people the ebooks through Book Funnel, and there's no delivery fees for that. So
Yeah.
the ebooks can have the cartoons as well as the paperback. Although like images in ebooks is a little bit tricky because people can reflow the text and change
Yeah.
how the size of it and the spacing, and that can get things to be a little bit crazy with images. So
And
not that you can't do it, you can.
another interesting thing that I found dealing with
Mm.
things like that was in the print version of Gingerbread Children. I took a lot of time to, like, I told you that they had all these procedures and ceremonies,
Mm.
and they have volumes of books detailing these things.
Right.
So I took a lot of time with the print ones to actually put them in an antique font to make them look ancient and venerable texts.
Oh, that's really cool.
So they were very, very different um, from the main body of the text. So you knew you
Mm.
were sort of looking at an ancient script. But of course, you can't do that for
No.
Kindle, an ebook, and
Yeah.
that because
No,
of
you
the
would have had to do a
yeah,
image and then deal with the delivery fees.
yeah. So that's why um, when I'm at a book fair or something and somebody says, "Oh, is it on Kindle?" I have to say yes, but the book is more charming. The physical book is more charming because it's got all the different fonts and things in it. If you get it on Kindle, it won't have. So swings and roundabouts, I suppose.
Yeah.
People don't have the bookshelf space that maybe some of us have, but there you go. As long as people are reading the book, hooray! That's it.
Yeah, yeah. And you can always like have like a supplemental thing that people can get through your newsletter where you have like a screenshot in the older, so if because like some, so they can get
Yeah,
sort of like, it's not the same experience as reading the paperback book, but they can get close.
yeah. And also, going back to various things that I write,
Sure.
I told you I started writing poetry because I just have this sort of facility for it. Um,
I mean,
all the spells,
a lot of authors write poetry.
yeah,
Nothing to be ashamed of or anything. I've written it.
yeah, the spells that are cast in my books, they're always cast in rhyme.
Yeah, I try to
Um,
do the same.
yeah,
I just feel that makes
and
it fun.
it is trying to, and it's not as easy as people would think trying to write a spell in rhyme. Um, you've got
Oh,
to
I just do it in English. Trying to rhyme English is not always fun. I feel like it's easier with Latin because like a lot of Romance languages end in vowels, so you have a lot more choices, for
oh
words that will rhyme with it. Whereas in English, sometimes you really need a certain word, and there's only one other word that rhymes with it, and it doesn't work in there, and you're like, okay,
yeah. Well,
how do we do this?
pity me. All my spells are in English, so I've set myself a very high bar there, I think.
Yeah, mine are all in English too. But then you can do fun things and like they remember one or two lines that rhyme and they're like, what's the next one?
What's the next one? What's the next line? What's the next line?
And
Um, and in Gingerbread Children, there is quite a long poem, which is absolutely crucial. That poem is the mystery that needs solving. Um, so if any of your listeners like fantasy that's got a bit of poetry in it and a mysterious poem, Gingerbread Children is the one for you.
I feel like poetry and fantasy go well together. Like, think of Tolkien. There's so
Absolutely.
many poems in his books.
They do, because
I mean, they just stop and just launch into poetry and song, which
It's a bit like a
yeah,
musical, isn't it?
yeah.
Where people just,
Sometimes it does. I'm like, wait, you are trying to get to Mordor. Like, there is some like you're rushing to get to Mordor, but we're gonna stop and okay.
stop
But
and
then
have a
you
song
think
and a dance.
Yeah, but then you think about it, like, they can't be constantly, like, rushing in haste. Sometimes they do have to take 5, and, like, if you were on a long hike, hiking 2,000 miles across the continent, you might take some time for a little bit of song and stuff to refresh your spirit, so
And also, in the traditions of storytelling, if if you make it a proper form, if you make the story a proper form, a poetic form, then people tend to learn it off by heart.
Mm.
And so you get a purer version of the story being handed down because people have learnt it off by heart. Whereas if you just tell a story in your own words, you're liable to leave bits out because you've forgotten them, or you know, you might screw up words or whatever. So you know, rhyme, rhyme and poetry is a natural
Mm.
storytelling form, isn't it? And a
No,
venerable one.
I totally agree, but I also wrote part of a novel completely in verse, so but I'm
Wow.
nuts. Well, it's you do crazy things when you're grieving, so my
Uh,
sister passed away in 2014, and then
oh,
I
I'm
joined
sorry.
some writing group online, and they were all into poetry, and I was very much needed time and space to grieve, and they had a bunch of prompts, and like I could write anything really. I have so many ideas and characters. So I just took the prompts and they just kind of naturally led into each other. So I just and it was poetry prompts. So I find I don't know why and iambic pentameter is really easy like for me.
Oh,
But
it is.
that
It's so
like
easy.
so I just did that and put them in sonnets and I just so I did a bunch of sonnets and they kind of led into each other in a story and they just kept going and at one point there was like god there was like uh like over 200 sonnets and it was telling
Wow.
this 70 it was 70 chapters and following this group on a quest across like the country that I write most of my books in and like I need to put it in prose though because
Oh, I don't know.
it got a bit
I think you should publish it as poems
well
because
I do want to release the original with the poems but I also want to do like a prose version because like I've
right.
left a lot out there's like yeah and then at one point it became poetry and prose because there was just things that like a conversation is not easy to do in a sonnet and sometimes the
Mm.
characters needed to like there was 4 of them in a scene and like trying to do their dialogue in the
Yes.
sonnet was like I was like this is an effort and insanity and this is going to make it really difficult for someone to understand so I'm going to break it and we can do them getting where they need to go that can be a sonnet and you know whatever they're doing like the fight that can be a sonnet but like when they're talking like we need to just let them talk you know because
Oh,
some of
that's so
them
fascinating because you could
yeah
have, like you say, you could have their journeying.
yeah
You know, you could have a chapter of verse, a chapter of prose, a chapter
Mhm.
of verse, a chapter of prose. That sounds absolutely fascinating. I think you should do that. I definitely think you should do that.
No, it is one of the things that's on my list. I have to there's a bunch of stories. There's a bunch of books still on my TBW to be written
Yes,
that I
my
have to finish.
TBW is like that.
Yeah, I have some series that I'm trying to wrap up. And then I do want to revise. I do want to do the prose version and have like a double special edition kind of thing where it's both versions in one so you can
Yeah.
read either you can read the prose version and which may keep some of the poetry like for the spells and things but or you can read the one that's nearly all in verse um yeah that's something that's on my to be written
Oh, it sounds like you've got an epic saga there.
it got pretty darn epic I
Yeah.
mean, we were I was having you know battle sequences written in verse that was
Wow.
you do
If I had a
crazy
hat on, I'd take my
things.
hat off.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just gonna say you do crazy things when you're grieving.
Well, you do. You absolutely do. But as I just said, if I had a hat on, I'd take my hat off to you.
Oh,
because
thank you.
writing a battle scene in poetry cannot be easy. It's bad enough
No,
in prose, but yeah,
that's definitely one of the scenes that could benefit from a prose rendering because you leave a lot out, and
yeah.
I don't think it conveys the I don't think it conveys the violence of it as
Mm,
well, because poetry tends to it tends to elevate things, and like I'm not sure that something like that, like where people things are, where creatures are losing their lives, should be elevated in that manner.
yeah, yeah. And I dare say it takes a lot of the action out of it as well,
Yes.
and a lot of the sort of excitement of the thing, the excitement of the battle out of it as well.
Yeah, that's why I really want to redo it in prose. Um, Maybe also changing the main character for somebody a little bit different. Um, I didn't really like the main character all that much after a while. All the other people around them were so much more interesting. So I'm still thinking about that. Like I think
It's
for the
funny though.
nature. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, after you.
No, I was just thinking, I think the main character for that really needs to be a magical creature and not a human. um, I think that would have, I think that would make the story better.
But I do think it's so interesting how characters that you have just sort of dreamt up out of your own imagination can stick with you. Because with Twicetime,
Mm.
um, that I told you that started from What If Frankenstein Had Been a Woman? Well, originally, I took this idea to my then writing partner, and we wrote a radio play of the. We planned it out as a radio series, and we wrote the
Oh,
first episode as a potential radio play. Um, and we sent it off to the BBC, and unfortunately, it didn't get through their commissioning process. Um, so we sort of put it to one side and concentrated on writing something else. But the characters and the idea of the plot just stuck in my mind, and they just would not vacate the place. And I thought, I want to know more about these characters that we've barely sketched out, really. Um, because the first episode was the first episode of this radio series encompassed the explosion at the beginning,
I see.
and Rosalind throwing Rudolph out. And I thought that it's just too, these characters are too interesting to let go.
Yeah, you
And so I wanted to know more.
should find out what that would cost to get to do it yourself and to see if you can raise the funds, because that just
Ooh.
sounds neat.
Yeah, yeah. And that's interesting, isn't it? Because I would love, who wouldn't, love to see them made into films. And I think they would make really, really good films because the plot is there and
Mm.
the characters are there. But obviously, it's getting it under the nose of somebody who likes it and is a film
Well,
producer.
I mean, it's an author that I've been following for a long time. She did a Kickstarter recently to fund doing the she did special editions, the hardcovers and all that, but also to create a documentary. She wrote a trilogy about women in World War II, but make it magical. They're like witches and things. Maybe not witches, but they have magic powers, and they're spying on and trying to, disrupt the Germans and stuff.
Yeah.
And but it was based on real people. So she did a Kickstarter to fund doing a documentary. And now she's doing another Kickstarter in soon to fund getting a script created,
Wow.
and the storyboarding, and to try and pitch it. So maybe that's something you want to think about, is like putting together an incremental plan to
Yeah.
do small, like fundraise each little bit, and then go for and see if you can, something to think about,
I'll put
because
that
you
on my list.
'Cause you probably got contacts if you used to work at the BBC. You probably know people who'd be interested in taking part or who have audiences who might they could tell about it, who might be
Oh,
interested. So something to think about. Like that's the great thing about being an indie author is that we can do
yes.
these things. There is, yeah, the BBC said no, but
Yeah.
that doesn't have to mean no for you, and that doesn't have to mean the project doesn't go forward.
No.
You can start looking for you can look into other ways of doing it, of funding it yourself, getting people on board who are excited and interested.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
really good idea. I'll have to get through my contacts book
Yeah.
and see who I know.
I mean, I would start with like an audiobook,
Yeah,
getting an audiobook of Twicetime, and
yeah,
then, because those are the people who would be most interested in seeing it in other words. But I mean, not that ebook readers would be as well, but that would give you another audience to draw from. So I'd go for that. Just
yeah.
just well, I mean, none of this is going to be easy or quick, but something to think
No.
about. Like what could you do? Like could you do a Kickstarter for a special edition and try and fund an audiobook? And then from there, could you try and fund getting the pitch created or getting a someone to storyboard or someone to write the radio play and maybe doing a multi-voice one and see how many steps could you take to get yourself to the point where like you might have a big enough audience to be attractive to someone making a film, or where you'd be comfortable like going and pitching to someone.
Oh, Melinda, you make it sound so easy.
No, I mean it's I think you're at a time we're at a time right now where and there's a lot of things that talk about this as the creator economy, and
Yeah,
people since the pandemic are willing to try other methods to support authors that they really enjoy. So I feel like you're at a time now when it's more possible than ever, if you sit and if you and I feel like you could, if you sit down and figure out all the different things that you could do, little like steps to to get there, to build
yeah,
that audience, to get that to get to those things. You could go bigger and bigger and bigger. I mean,
yeah.
it's going to
I
take
definitely
time.
think. Mm,
Yeah.
I definitely think the audio book is the next logical step,
I
if you like,
do.
for that.
I do.
Yeah.
I do think so. Because that's probably a little bit more reachable.
Yes.
Um, and that would give you another audience.
Yes.
Um, and yeah, no, it's just all things that like it's never been a better time to be an indie author, I think, because there's just so many different ways you can go with it. And if you really want a film or something, there's no reason why you couldn't get it.
No.
There've been authors who have self-funded their own films and produced it
Yeah.
themselves. There it's anything is possible. You just have to
Absolutely,
build to
it
it.
is. And just being part of SPFBO
Yeah.
it's given me a great boost because I got through to be a semi-finalist.
Or are
I'm
you in
through as a
9?
semi-finalist
Are
with
you in
Twice
9?
Time,
Yeah.
SPFBO 9.
Yeah,
Um,
that I'm in it too.
yeah, and that just made me feel so good. And I thought there is an audience out there for Twice Time. There really is, and it just sort of vindicates all the hard work that you do as an author,
Yeah,
doesn't it?
it does. And yeah, there's still my blogger is still working through his batch. I'm still in it, but he hasn't announced all of his semifinalists or his finalists yet. So uh
Ooh,
I'm,
fingers crossed.
I'm waiting on bated
Yes.
breath to find
Yeah.
out. I my the first book of my Cursebreaker series that I did the Kickstarter on, he is Cursebreaker Enchanted is in SBO9. SBO
Wow.
SB SPFBO.
SBO 9. Yeah.
SBO. I will get
Spiffo.
the acronym right by the end of it.
Oh,
By next summer, I'll have the acronym down. But yeah, it's been an interesting time. I've definitely enjoyed like talking to a lot of the authors who have
yeah.
been part of it, whether they were finalists or not.
Mm.
I've bought a lot of books.
And that's the thing. I found it's been such a supportive community. The
It,
SPFBO 9
oh
it's
yeah,
been so supportive, and I I would recommend it to any self-published fantasy author. is, if you can, get your book in there, because it certainly brought my books to the attention of people who would never otherwise have clapped eyes on it.
And that's cool.
And that's very cool.
That's
very
just
cool.
so awesome.
Yeah. And what more can you ask,
No, exactly.
Then people read your book, like it, review it. Brilliant.
And get the sequel.
It's just be good.
I know Carol doesn't have sequels, but I have sequels.
You have sequels. You have sequels, people.
I have series.
Yes. I have one other book. Melinda has sequels.
I have sequels. I write in series.
But that's brilliant, isn't it? Because you're getting recurring readers, repeating readers. And
just like the readers, I need to know what happens next. I'm not writing series for any other reason than I like these characters, and at the end of the every book ends and I'm like, but what do they do next?
Yes.
Are they gonna hang up their magic and chill out? Doubtful.
Yeah. I know that when people read Gingerbread Children, a lot of people said to me, I just want to know what happens to these characters next. I love these characters. Where do they go now? And, what do they do next? And I had to say, at the moment, I have no idea, because I'm writing a completely different book. It's set in the same world, but it's got a completely different cast of characters. And then when people have read Twicetime, they've gone, oh, I love these characters. What are they going to do next? I don't know.
Yeah, that's when you tell people. Yeah, that's when you tell people, when the characters tell me what they're doing next, I'll write it so you can find out. I'm waiting for the characters to decide what we are doing next.
Yes, definitely. Absolutely.
Because we have to write we have to write about the characters that are speaking to us right now.
We do. And some of them just won't shut up.
Yes. I'm trying to write one trilogy, and certain characters who I've already written a lot of books about will not shut up. But I have to finish the trilogy because they wreck the timeline, and I have to save my favorite character. So the other characters talking now have to shut up because I have to save them. And then we can find out what they do next.
Yes.
Right now their timeline doesn't exist, and I can't allow that to happen. So
not if you want more sequels, you can't do it.
Yeah. This is what happens when you have too many series and things set in the same world. They can cross over and they can do things that cause problems in other series, and you're like, wait, no, I didn't okay that. And then you have to write a book to fix it.
Yes.
When you'd rather be seeing what your favorite characters are doing.
It is so satisfying when, and before you actually become an author, you don't necessarily believe this when authors say, I don't know just what happened there, but this character just wanted to do this thing. Just wanted to say this line or go to this place or whatever.
Or they wanted to go to hell and rob a fortress.
Exactly.
And somebody asked that, and I was like, look, if you could find out from the character why they absolutely had to look, I was interested that it was a cool idea. I don't know why they decided to do this, but it was so neat that I was so distracted by the cool, sparkly idea that we didn't ask those questions.
You just got to go with it.
Yeah.
Because if you don't go with it, all it's going to do is sit in the back of your mind, grumbling about why you didn't go with it and why you should go with it. And you must go with it, because if you don't, I'm going to sit here forever just grumbling.
Right. So after these current books that you're writing, do you have something else on the to be written list? Or is that all that's on the to be written list? And then by the time you get to the end of those, the list will have refreshed itself.
The second part. Yes. That's on my TBW list, and I've got to work my way through those. But funnily enough, I do have half a non-fantasy novel written, which I would like to get finished. But the fantasy just seems to have taken over.
It does that.
Yeah, it does. It's
I
taken
think
over
it's
my
the
life.
magic. They cast a spell on you, and books that are not fantasy don't have that ability. So
And also, I mean, I like to think that I've created this world that I now know, and I know intimately as if I was walking its streets. And I think, why would I jettison that in favour of something else?
exactly. Then it becomes fun to take. I have this interesting idea, and I have this world that I've been writing in that I like. Can
Yeah,
I make the idea fit in the world?
yes. And it literally is almost like you are walking down streets that you know, because
Hmm.
suddenly you think an idea will come to you and you go, "Ugh, who lives there? Who lives next to the tavern? Why is that hanging up in their shop window? What's this for?" And if you can see it in your head, you know that behind every one of those windows, in every one of those streets that you have carefully created, there is a little story going on. And what you need to decide is, which door do you knock on to
Mm.
go and find that story?
The answer is all of them, of course.
All of them in time, absolutely. And time's the thing. That's what we need. We need time.
Yeah. Well, I've been writing a lot faster with dictation. Sometimes the characters just there's so much they're saying, and I'm like, all right, we got to switch to dictation. The fingers can't keep up.
Oh, wow.
And we
I'm
need to
impressed
get
with
it all
that.
down. Well, it's easier now. Like you don't need special equipment. Like your smartphone has a dictation, but has a microphone, and you can just talk.
Yeah.
It stops recording after a bit, and so you may have to restart it. So you got to keep an eye on it. But yeah, so like it's it's become easier to get your thoughts down. And of
Ah.
course, we have more thoughts and more ideas than ever now because that's the
Mm,
way it always goes.
yes.
The more you
It's
can get down, the more the ideas explode.
as they shuffle forward to the front of your mind and then drop down into your mouth and
Hmm.
out they come. There's another one coming up at the back to take
Yep.
its place, and
Oh
they're
yeah.
constantly marching forwards towards your mouth.
Yep. And then you have ideas for stuff that like, nope, that doesn't fit in this book.
I'll
But
write
it's
that
so
down for another
cool.
book.
Yeah, but it's so cool. I'll just take 5 minutes, just 5 minutes to see where it goes. And you've
Yeah.
written 5 chapters of another book, and you're like, wait, no, I'm not supposed to be doing that. We have one whip right now and one whip only, and that is all I'm supposed to be writing.
Yes, I've got quite a few folders that have got like little mind maps in for various books that I think, oh, that's an idea. Write a little mind map. Who's the central character? What do they like? What do they don't like? Where do they live? What are they going to do? Who are they going to do it with? Who's going to interfere with it? Who's going to stop it? That kind of thing. And yeah, it's you've just reminded me. I do have another idea on the go for the characters that were in Gingerbread Children.
Oh,
Um, and so, yeah, oh, I'm going to have to get on with it now, aren't I?
yeah. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to say about Twicetime or Gingerbread Children? So we can let you go and get that idea going.
um, well, I mean, the thing Twicetime is it's not just it's a funny fantasy. It's a comic fantasy because I said I'm all about the giggles, but there are heartstring tugging moments in this as well, and it's about relationships. Um, it's about people who want to be in a relationship, people who want to be out of a relationship, people who have relationships thrust upon them,
Mm.
and what do they do with it? And it's about friends who become family and found family and love, and there's romance in there as well. But there's lashings of cups of tea, and there's big meals, and booze and sex, and
Oh wow.
um, well, not very much sex to be honest, but um,
So it's not
there's
spicy.
yeah, there's talking cats. There's sword fighting and a castle. What more do you want from a book that's a comedy fantasy it's got a lovely warm heart to it. I think that's what I would say.
So we're making Frankenstein and giving him a warm and loving heart.
Oh, yeah.
So
He's the monster. He's a really, really nice character. I really enjoyed writing him. Because he just turned out to be such a lovely person.
which is so funny. Here she's trying to build an assassin, and he's
Yeah.
instead she gets, a cinnamon roll.
And he's sort of quite stunned. What? You want me to do what? What? No. What? But he turns out to be he's a really lovely character, and I'm glad I wrote him.
That'd be interesting to see how she gets out of her predicament when she didn't quite
Well,
get the bodyguard she hoped.
indeed, yes. So that's it. You'll have to buy Twicetime to find out.
Thank you so much for joining us, today and coming here to talk about Gingerbread Children and Twicetime.
Thank you, Melinda, for inviting me, because it's been really good. It's been good fun, and we've covered a lot of subjects.
Yeah, and you got to come back with the next book so we can find out, how that went.
Yeah. Yes. I've picked up advice from you, and we've given advice out to other people, and I hope it's been brilliant for you as it has for me.
No, I've had a lot of fun on this rainy Saturday. So thank you so much. That'll do it for this episode of Fantasy Lore and More. And today we had Carol Carman, and we talked about Twicetime and Gingerbread Children and like tons of other things. So thank you. Have a great day and a great night. And we'll be back with another episode with another fantasy author soon. Thank you.